Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu was flabbergasted. He looked at Sai Yinxiang and then looked at Granny Sai beside him again, with a stupefied expression. He had always thought Granny Sai was Sai Yinxiang, and now another Sai Yinxiang had jumped out, and she was the current saintess of Heavenly Devil cult. He felt his mind becoming messy. The current saintess also had the surname Sai, therefore, he had the first impression, and kept testing whether if she was Granny Sai. He even purposely teased the saintess a few times to see if she would become shy. Until last time, when Sai Yinxiang tested him, only did he confirm Sai Yinxiang was Granny Sai, and now the saintess of this generation is much safer than the previous generation. The previous generation's saintess was simply a demoness. A white-haired elder sighed, even though they are both from Sai family, the saintess of this generation won't bring harm to our sacred cult. Granny Sai stared at him with angry eyes. That elder turned his head away, and acted like he didn't see it. Sai Yinxiang went forward and came to Qin Mu's side. She was still slightly shy and greeted sincerely, "Young cult master. Saintess Sai Yinxiang pays my respects to young cult master." Qin Mu immediately returned her greeting. "Junior sister is too courteous." The saintess of this generation is natural and unrestrained in her conduct. An elder sighed ruefully, not like the one of the previous generation, plotting to kill the sacred cult master as a wife. Granny Sai flew into a rage and shouted, "Old woman, I am still here. What do you old man want?" That elder immediately shut up, and didn't dare to argue with her. Saintess Sai Yinxiang ain't someone who is easy to deal with. Qin Mu's gaze wavered and looked at this girl who looked delicate and shy, thinking to himself, she has a profound mind and the one who defeated Fozi should be her. She then came to flaunt to me to test my limits of decorum. She had long known I was the young cult master, yet she showed off in front of me. What was that for? Granny Sai smiled. Sai Yinxiang is from my Sai family and Patriarch taught her personally for a few years. Patriarch found her after he had already found you, and when he met her, he even sighed ruefully that if he had met her earlier, he wouldn't have chosen you. Qin Mu looked at Sai Yinxiang, and Sai Yinxiang also looked over coincidentally. Their gazes met and Qin Mu could see the unacceptance in her seemingly gentle eyes. Qin Mu gave a smile. Sai Yinxiang should be groomed accordingly by the young patriarch under the cult master's rules. He then let her take Imperial College's examination with Qin Mu in the same year to compare the two of them. Qin Mu never knew that he actually had a contest with this girl. How could she help when Qin Mu was too stunning during the examination, and had beat Daoist Ling Yun all the way to the emperor? No matter what Sai Yinxiang tried to do, it would only be overshadowed by him and no way better than him. Meanwhile, Patriarch's test was to test Qin Mu's ability in being a cult master. After testing, Patriarch had his mind set, and the person he chose wasn't Sai Yinxiang. Compared to her, Qin Mu was more suitable to be the sacred cult master. However, Sai Yinxiang didn't accept it, therefore, after she had defeated Fozi, she came to flaunt to Qin Mu. The young patriarch looked around and asked, "Heavenly King Qian hasn't arrived yet?" "Not yet." The young patriarch frowned. Heavenly King Qian always had a temper that burned with anxiety. No matter what it was, he would always be the first to be involved in. Now that he was still not here, it meant that he was already unable to come. What matter could be more important than the ascension of the cult master? There could only be one reason why Heavenly King Qian couldn't attend the cult master's ascension. "Young cult master, you must treat the family of Heavenly King Qian well," the young patriarch told him softly. Qin Mu's heart trembled slightly, and was about to inquire when the young patriarch announced solemnly, 360 halls, unfurl your flags and meet at Saint Arrival Mountain. Whoosh! The huge flags unfurled and the entire manor was completely covered. When the huge flags were furled back, the city lord's manor in Harmony Prefecture City had vanished into thin air without a trace. The place where the city lord's manor had been was only left with a piece of white land. When the huge flags that had shrouded them above their heads vanished, Qin Mu looked around and was greatly shocked. He could see that they had left the bustling Harmony Prefecture City and came to a place that didn't look like the mortal world. There was a circular sky above his head, and below his feet were mountain ranges standing tall on the illusory ground. One could not reach the sky going upwards, and could not reach the ground going downwards. The green mountain was fresh green, yet no sun could be seen up in the sky and no land could be seen when he lowered his head. This mountain seemed not to be located in the mortal world. This is Saint Arrival Mountain. Qin Mu looked around and saw range upon range of mountains. Some palace halls were hidden deep in the forest, which should be the palace halls constructed by the sacred cult. However, the young patriarch didn't bring him around those palace halls, and had instead brought him to a cypress pine. That cypress pine was verdant and lush, and had been around for God knows how many years. There was a straw hut under the pine cypress and it was very clean. The hut didn't have any signs of degeneration from the passing time. There was a large rock under the cypress pine, and the young patriarch came to the bottom of the cypress pine. The 360 hall masters, 12 cult protector elders, 8 great supervisors, 3 great cult heavenly kings, left and right guardians sat down under the cypress pine. The young patriarch signaled Qin Mu to go forward and said, "This mountain was originally in the mortal world. Back then, when the founding master of our heavenly saint cult came here, he saw a woodcutter chopping firewood. The tree he was chopping was this cypress pine. When the woodcutter chopped the firewood, he did it with a regular movement, which seemed to contain boundless marvel within it. Meanwhile, when the cypress pine received a chop, another piece would grow out, returning it to its original state. When the founding master realized he met a saint, he consulted that woodcutter. That woodcutter then imparted his path to him under this cypress pine, and once he started, he continued on for dozens of years. The founding master received endless comprehension, but he still wasn't satisfied, and thus he asked the woodcutter how to become a saint. Qin Mu listened carefully and the young patriarch paused for a moment before continuing. Woodcutter said, "If one wants to become a saint, one must first establish one's virtue, establish one's merit, and establish one's ideas in writing, which are the 3 immortal deeds." The founding master asked once again on how to attain the 3 immortal deeds. Woodcutter said, "Clear logic, clear understanding, clear teaching." The 3 clears became the teacher of all the people. Thus, the founding master was completely enlightened. The young patriarch lifted his head and looked at this cypress pine, which had gone through the transformation of time. The founding master knew to become a saint, he had to first become the teacher of all people. Therefore he tidied up the saints' teaching into writings and compiled them into a record, which is now known as Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures. When the founding master wrote out Great Educational Heavenly Devil Scriptures, he had attained clear logic. He then traveled around the world and experienced a few hundred years of imparting the principles that the saint had imparted to him to others. The principles which the saint had imparted to him became his principles after he had imparted to others. From one's mouth to your ears, from your mouth to his ears, this is understanding. The founding master attained clear understanding. As for clear teachings, the founding master founded a cult to recall fondly on how the woodcutter had shown him the right path. Therefore he had called it Heavenly Saint Cult and established the cult's doctrine. The path of the saint is none other than the everyday use for common people. Anyone who does otherwise is considered heresy. To act straightforwardly, to follow the course of nature, that's the meaning of path. That's the origin of our cult's doctrine. Below them, even though all the hall masters, guardians, elders were the higher-ups, most of them were attending the cult master's ascension for the first time. Even the cult protector elders, cult heavenly kings, didn't familiarize themselves with the history. They had originally thought that some world-shaking ceremony would be held for the cult master's ascension, and never expected the young patriarch to start talking about the history of the cult. Regarding this legendary story of the founding master, they had seen records among the cult's ancient records, but they were only the bits and pieces and not as detailed and moving as how the young patriarch had described. What clear teachings meant was to impart, to teach. The founding master founded the cult was to impart the saints' teachings to everyone in the world. He managed to become the teacher of all people, having clear logic, clear understanding and clear teaching. He established his virtue, established his words, but he didn't establish his merits, and thus had not become a saint. The young patriarch continued, in his later years, he thought and thought, yet he didn't know where his merits lay. Even though the founding master had not become a saint, he had established his words for the saint and founded a cult personally, perfecting his virtue. By attaining the 3 clears and 2 immortal deeds, he had already far surpassed countless of ordinary people. Qin Mu, are you willing to inherit the founding master's virtue and words, logic, and understanding? Qin Mu bowed and cupped his fists while stretching forward. Disciple is willing to. The young patriarch gave a smile and said, in that case, the cult will belong to you. You will have to undertake this responsibility. Qin Mu replied solemnly, disciple will undertake this responsibility. The young patriarch smiled gently and said, go and sit on the rock. Qin Mu went forward to sit on the rock under the cypress pine. The young patriarch looked down and his voice reverberated deeply, this rock is Saint's Rock, the saint's seat. Back then, the woodcutter that had guided the founding master was a saint that came down from the heavens. He had no blood relations with the founding master, no benefits to gain, yet he had become a teacher and imparted skills to the founding master only because the founding master had sought to learn from him. The one who sits on Saint's Rock is the cult master, but he will also be the sacred teacher of our cult. His gaze swept over every single one of the hall masters, cult protector elders, supervisors, heavenly kings, and guardians. He ordered solemnly, all of you, do the disciples right and pay your respects to the sacred teacher. The 360 hall masters, 12 cult protector elders, 8 great supervisors, 3 cult heavenly kings, left and right guardians all maintained the disciples' rights. Saint Asai Yunxiang hesitated for a moment and could only maintain the disciples' right. Disciples pay our respects to sacred cult master. Everyone shouted in unison, which reverberated throughout the entire Saint Arrival Mountain. The young patriarch looked at Granny Sai and said solemnly, Li Qianxing, the new cult master has already ascended, so why aren't you showing yourself? Aren't you going to impart the technique of our cult? Are you going to bring the sacred technique of our cult to your grave and completely bury it? Granny Sai's body trembled and an ancient voice came out, disciple, follows teacher's decree. She was clearly a woman, yet she spoke like an old man, with a rough voice, which had an extremely overbearing awe. However, he didn't dare to be unbridled in front of the young patriarch. Granny Sai came to the front of Qin Mu. Qin Mu was about to stand up when Granny Sai's palm touched his forehead. Golden lights traveled back and forth in the heart of Granny Sai's brows, and all kinds of sounds rang out along with the golden lights, as they tunneled into the heart of Qin Mu's brows and into his mind. Cult Master Li, someone whispered below. At this moment, the one who was in control of Granny Sai's body was the previous cult master, Li Qianxing. Even though he was assassinated by Granny Sai, he had also planted himself into Granny's Dao heart, and turned into the devil in Granny Sai's heart, waiting for the time to replace her to turn into the woman he loved most. All kinds of disorderly voices sounded in Qin Mu's mind. There seemed to be lectures from the 9 heavens above, devils whispering beside his ears, Buddhas chanting scriptures in his heart, sounding indescribably weird. The voice of the saint. Linger over an hour. His heart suddenly trembled as he thought of a possibility. The voice was the voice of that woodcutter. What cult master Li had imparted to him was the scriptures that the woodcutter had imparted to the founding master. Capital city, Imperial Preceptor's manor. The official registrar immediately rushed over and reported, Imperial Preceptor, there are unusual changes in Harmony Prefecture City. The higher-ups of Heavenly Devil Cult have all gathered in Harmony Prefecture City, and there are countless of bandits there. Suddenly the city lord's manor in Harmony Prefecture City vanished into thin air and left a plot of white land. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was reading the memorials the Emperor sent to him and replied without even raising his head, got it. The official registrar hesitated and said, Imperial Preceptor, this is Heavenly Devil Cult, the number one sect of the Devil Path. Now such an event happened under our eyes, we can't let our guard down. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his head and asked, Yun Yang, do you know who is the patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult? Official Registrar Yun Yang shook his head. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor told him calmly, if you knew who he was, you wouldn't be so panicky. He's none other than the Grand Chancellor of our Imperial College. Official Registrar Yun Yang's heart trembled violently and he cried out, it's him. Imperial Preceptor, the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult actually has worked as the Grand Chancellor of Imperial College for so many years, this is a rebellion. How many officials and generals has he taught over so many years? His power would probably have infiltrated the imperial courts, and even into the army. Imperial Preceptor, this matter can't go uninvestigated. Our army might already be filled with all his people. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was speechless and shook his head, you're thinking too much. Heavenly Devil Patriarch teaches scholars, so these scholars are people of Heavenly Devil Cult. If that's the case, are you going to catch and execute me as well? He stood up and took slow strides with his sharp gaze. Back then when I was traveling around the world and learning all kinds of stuff, I saw each sect in the world do things each in its own way, and only valued what was his own. This restricted the advancement of the divine arts, paths, and skills. Therefore, I decided to visit the big sects, hoping to break the barriers of them. The first person I met was Heavenly Devil Patriarch. He was the first person who threw away the sectarian bias and taught me wholeheartedly. He was also the one who pointed out a clear path for me. His eyes gave off a highly esteemed expression as he continued, after that, he personally recommended me and let me bring his letter to meet Tao Master of Tao Sect. It was also because of his letter, Tao Master saw me in a different light, and showed interest in me, allowing me to browse the 14 writings of Tao Sword. It was also him who made me go forward to Great Thunderclap Monastery to meet Rulai and attain Rulai's teachings. Even though he had never revealed his identity, he still couldn't hide it from me, nor did he try to. Official Registrar Yu Yang couldn't be more stunned. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, I had invited him out of the mountain to help me take charge of Imperial College, so what was it for? It was not his ability, nor his identity of the Patriarch of Heavenly Devil Cult. It was because he had this broad-mindedness. It was the first time I had seen such a broad-minded person, someone who was so pure. Therefore he was the only one who could take charge of Imperial College. Now that he had left, he should be busy with the next cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult. The next cult master of the Devil Cult. Official Registrar Yun Yang composed himself and said, it's already been over 40 years since Heavenly Devil Cult has no cult master, and they're actually choosing one now. Imperial Preceptor, this matter is of utmost importance, should we report it to the Emperor? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, write a memorial and report this matter to the Emperor. As for the background of Heavenly Devil Patriarch, there's no need for you to say anything. Official Registrar acknowledged and reported once more, there's news from Imperial College that the Emperor has given the decree for Ji Yulinwan to succeed the position of the Grand Chancellor. Got it? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor gestured with his hand and said, "My power is too strong and it's natural for the Emperor to worry, else I would not be at ease. It's just that Ji Yulinwan's talent and virtue are not suitable to take up the position of Imperial College's Grand Chancellor. He is still okay being a junior protector of the Crown Prince, but he is too unfit to perform a Grand Chancellor's task. However, I can't speak much about this matter." Official Registrar pondered for a moment and said, "How should we deal with the new cult master that Heavenly Devil Cult has chosen?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said indifferent, "Flourish if he goes along, die if he goes against. There's no need for you to bother yourself over this matter. I'll meet this new cult master personally." Official Registrar Yun Yang moved out from the room. Dao Sect, Dao Mountain. Dan Yangzi went up the mountain in quick steps and came to Dao Saint Hall. A white-haired and white eyebrows elder was sitting there on the ground and gazing at a pool of bluish-green water in front of him. Dan Yangzi immediately said, "Dao Master, unusually changes have happened in the nest of Heavenly Devil Cult." The experts of Heavenly Devil Cult all gathered in Harmony Prefecture and unfurled their huge flags, vanishing entirely with the City Lord's manner. The white-haired and white eyebrows elder opened his eyes and said slowly, "It seems like Heavenly Devil Cult has a new cult master." Heavenly Devil Cult had fabricated the history and imparted the false path under the pretense of a fake saint to bring calamity to all people. Internal conflicts arose in their cult. The saint has killed the cult master in cold blood. This violated the general principles. And the cult master married his disciple. This violated the human relationship. The cult cultivated evil skills, and there is quite a majority of them using human lives to cultivate, giving no regards to their backgrounds. They had no cult master for the past 40 years, and now a new one is chosen today. I'm afraid it ain't going to be the good fortune of the common people. Dan Yangzi asked, "What should our Dao sect do?" "Find out the identity of this devil cult master, and wait for an opportunity to get rid of him." "I received your decree." Dan Yangzi asked again. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor sets the doctrine of Heavenly Devil Cult as a goal. Thus Eternal Peace Empire is practically a large-scaled Heavenly Devil Cult, teaching irrespective of one's background. What should our Dao sect do then? Dao Master had a deep gaze and quietly looked at the pool of bluish-green water in front of him while saying, "Neither too fast nor too slow. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor has a thriving ambition, but his ability can't withstand his ambition." There were larger empires than Eternal Peace Empire in the history, and even outstanding talents than Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, yet they had all turned into dust, into great ruins. This world is much more complicated than he thinks. He would know when he runs into a stone wall and gets badly battered. Dan Yangzi didn't dare to say anything else and bowed to retreat. Reporting to Rulai, Heavenly Devil Cult's followers have disappeared without a trace in Harmony Prefecture, along with the City Lord's manor. Great Thunderclap Monastery, an old monk came to the throne hall seeking for Rulai to report. The magistrate of Harmony Prefecture belongs to Elder Yulin of Heavenly Devil Cult, who is a terrifying figure. Harmony Prefecture has already become an iron fortress for Heavenly Devil Cult. There are also people who saw the girl who had defeated Fozi in Harmony Prefecture. We guess she should be from Heavenly Devil Cult. Rulai opened his eyes and asked in astonishment, "Isn't that girl a scholar of Imperial College? How come she's from Heavenly Devil Cult?" The old monk replied, "That girl is called Sai Yunxiang, and only entered Imperial College this year. There was absolutely no time for Imperial College to teach her anything, so how could she have the ability to defeat Fozi? This girl comes from the Sai family, which is the same family as the previous cult mistress, Sai Yuyu. Sai family is also a prestigious family in Eternal Peace Empire." Rulai asked, "In that case, is the new cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult from the Sai family?" "It's not known. There's still no news of it. Rulai nodded his head and said, Imperial College made use of the Saintess of Heavenly Devil cult to defeat the holy son of our great Thunderclap monastery. We can't leave this matter at that. You can move down, continue to make each and every monastery scout out more information. That old monk received his decree and said, There's also one more thing, Ma Wangshan has come out from great ruins. After he said these words, he turned to walk down the mountain. Old Rulai was stunned. Saint Arrival Mountain, all kinds of mysterious voices sounded beside Qin Mu's ears, which were extraordinary marvelous. Suddenly his eyes blurred and he discovered he had become a passerby walking along the mountains, where a woodcutting sound came from afar. Walking towards the sound, he saw a woodcutter chopping firewood under a cypress pine. The axe of the woodcutter had a mysterious trace as it landed on the cypress pine time and time again, enthralling him and making him feel as if he could comprehend something from it. He stared blankly at the woodcutter's axe. That axe would create a deep mark whenever it landed on the cypress pine, but when the axe was lifted up once again, the wound of the cypress pine would return back to normal and no mark was left behind. When the woodcutter chopped the tree, every axe gave him a different impression. Passerby, after standing here to look for such a long time, what do you see? That woodcutter pulled back his axe and turned his head to look at him. Your family has already turned into skeletons, buried deep under the ground. Your children have been much older than you. Your grandchildren have already started their families and have their own children. Passerby, you have stood here and looked for 100 years. May I request teacher to teach me? Qin Mu saw this woodcutter sit on the rock under the cypress pine, and he started to impart his knowledge to him. As he listened in intoxication, thousands of marvelous logics came flowing to him. Sitting beside the rock, he listened for dozens of years and the unity technique of great educational heavenly devil scriptures was imparted to him through this wonderful lecture. That woodcutter stretched out his hand and touched the top of his head. Qin Mu opened his eyes and saw Granny Sai moving back. He was still in Saint Arrival Mountain, he was still in the present and did not go back to the past. This was the teaching of the previous cult masters of Heavenly Devil cult, imbuing what the founding master had encountered back then, passing it down every generation, the fire never extinguishing. Qin Mu sat on the rock in a daze. The saint touched my head, binding my hair to pass me longevity. The unity technique of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures had no words nor pictures, and it could only be passed down from one cult master to another. Numerous complicated pieces of information appeared in his mind which couldn't form a system yet. This imbue even though had not raised his cultivation, it had brought too many things to him, and he needed to sort them out to comprehend. Now he knew why the founding master had said that this unity technique could only be passed down from cult master to cult master. This was because there was no unity technique formed in great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. Or one could say that the unity technique was not yet formed. The unity technique of great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures was hidden in the lecture by the woodcutter on the rock. However, this required the previous cult masters to comprehend the lecture by themselves. How much they can comprehend, and what they can comprehend, would have to depend on the comprehension of the sacred cult masters themselves. They will choose their own directions, their own wisdom and their own fortunes. It could be completely said that unity technique comprehended by each sacred cult master of Heavenly Devil cult was different. Perhaps the concept would be somewhat similar, but the unity technique of each sacred cult master was definitely different from the others. 360 cult masters would have 360 cultivation methods, and 10,000 cult masters would have 10,000 cultivation methods. Qin Mu's first thought was fraud. What a fraud! The legendary unity technique actually couldn't be used just like that and he had to comprehend it. His second thought was that this was then the true teaching, this was what it meant to be a sacred teacher. What you comprehended was yours and what you learned was others. Passing down techniques in Heavenly Saint cult had something that other sects, including Imperial College, couldn't match. The young patriarch let out a sigh of relief and looked at Granny Sai. Cult Master Li's voice came out from Granny Sai's mouth. Teacher, I'm no longer the sacred cult master. This is my chance to break the devil in my heart. May teacher not get in my way. The young patriarch's gaze wavered and he shook his head. You had turned yourself into a heart devil and planted yourself in her Tao heart. You should know that if she refined you, you will just be paving the way for her. No matter if she refines me or if I take over her, we'll both become one. Cult Master Li's voice traveled out. No matter if it's good or bad, it's my choice. When I decided to marry her, I had deeply known that she was the devil in my heart, and I had no choice but to get rid of her. By getting rid of her, only then can I put my mind down to seek the path and make further progress. I request teacher to help me achieve it. Qin Mu's heart leaped and he looked towards the young patriarch. He had long known that there was a great devil in Granny Sai's heart, and this devil was extremely powerful. Even the Kakra staff of Great Thunderclap Monastery couldn't purify him. Only now did he know that the heart devil was the previous cult master, Li Qianxing. Granny Sai killed Li Qianxing, yet he turned into a heart devil and planted himself into Granny Sai's Tao heart, fighting with her over one body. In his heart, he naturally wanted to help Granny Sai refine Li Qianxing. However, the young patriarch was obviously impartial and would not have the same thoughts. No matter whether Granny Sai refined Li Qianxing or Li Qianxing took over Granny Sai's body, either was fine for the young patriarch, therefore, there was no need for him to interfere. After a while, Granny Sai got back to normal and looked cheerful as usual, as if nothing had happened. Qin Mu could see that most of the hall masters and elders in Heavenly Devil cult didn't like Granny Sai. It was probably because Granny Sai had killed Li Qianxing and made the sacred cult have no cult master to lead them for the past 40 years. With all of them scattered like sands, they had missed numerous opportunities, therefore, they kind of hated Granny Sai. The main reason Granny Sai had come forth to attend the ceremony of the cult master's ascension was Qin Mu. She was afraid that the people of the cult would bully him, therefore even if she was to face their hatred, she still had to come and support him. Imparting the unity technique or not, she didn't care at all. All she cared was Qin Mu. The young patriarch gave a sigh. Femme fatale referred to a woman like Granny Sai. Just because she was too beautiful, even if she didn't commit evil, people would still commit evil for her. It was hard for this world to contain such a beauty. Li Qianxing was worldly, the young patriarch was also worldly, and the others couldn't be exempted from being worldly as well. If she wanted to survive in this worldly world, she could only be Granny Sai and could never reveal her true appearance, not even her voice. After the ascension ceremony, the young patriarch called Qin Mu over and walked side by side with him to introduce the scenery of Saint Arrival Mountain to him. This place was Terrace of Forgotten Love, that place was Pavilion of Phoenix Arrival, the other place was Floor Under Heaven, and another place was Fish Observation Pond. He said a lot of stuff and briefed him about the history of Heavenly Devil cult. Some pages of the history of Heavenly Devil cult were very ancient, and if he didn't say it out, there won't be anyone that would know it after he died. Patriarch, why do we Heavenly Saint cult use the word ascension for taking over the new cult master's position? Qin Mu asked, isn't ascension just used for the emperor? The young patriarch looked at him and shook his head. When our Heavenly Saint cult was at its most glorious state, we had 6 empires under us, and the emperors of the 6 empires were all followers of our Heavenly Saint cult. The sacred cult master using the term ascension, which was also used for the emperors, was actually showing respect for the emperors. Things changed with the passage of time, and now the empire is the biggest sect. It's hard for a sect to make all the people become disciples of the sect, but an empire can make all the people in its borders the people of this empire. Qin Mu was deep in thought. The young patriarch led him up the mountain and said, Saint Arrival Mountain is the headquarters of our cult, and it's still a difficult task for you to enter the headquarters. This time you were sent into it by the 360 Hall Masters activating their teleportation flags. But as the sacred cult master, how can you not have your own ability to enter the headquarters personally? Qin Mu followed him, and saw the young patriarch leading him into a great hall. The shape of the great hall could only be considered normal, and wasn't the slightest luxurious like Roland's golden palace. It was only constructed out of green bricks and red tiles. When they came to the inside of the hall, Qin Mu found that the decorations were also very simple. There was only a sculpture of the saint placed inside. The young patriarch came to the saint's sculpture and offered a few incenses. Qin Mu also followed him and paid respect to the saint's sculpture. The young patriarch said, Most of the elders, heavenly kings are proficient in the art of teleportation, and can return to Saint Arrival Mountain. The art of teleportation is carved on the wall of this hall, and you can take your time to comprehend it. Qin Mu looked at the wall of the palace hall, and saw there was a treasure refining method on it. It was the refining method of the teleportation flags, as well as the divine arts and formation runes needed to create the teleportation flags. The young patriarch said, There are different techniques carved on each and every one of our sacred cult's great halls. There's no restriction for our disciples to learn and cultivate. There's no need to treasure a shabby broom. It's up to their abilities to master them after we impart them the techniques. You need to have magnanimity and the broad-mindedness. Qin Mu understood. The young patriarch then said, The things in great educational heavenly devil scriptures could be imparted out, and there's no need to keep it to yourself. How much they can comprehend is up to themselves. As for the matters of the cult, the small matters will be handled by the hall masters, while the big matters will be handled by the elders. As for the bigger ones, the heavenly kings will handle them. There are also supervisors to supervise all the halls, and elder of discipline to enforce the law, elder of techniques to impart techniques. Therefore, there isn't much stuff that you have to do personally. What you have to do is to control the general direction of our heavenly saint cult. He looked at Qin Mu and asked, So what's the first thing you are going to do now after being the sacred cult master? Qin Mu thought for a moment and said, To set up primary schools in each and every hall, forming the 360th hall, the school hall. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptors reform established primary schools and college, which created a new profession in this world. Therefore our sacred cult will need to have one more hall. Since the sacred cult has 360 halls, I would like to build 360 primary schools to teach the cult disciples the path of cultivation. The young patriarch nodded and said, For this matter, you can call the left and right guardians and entrust this matter to them. They will discuss it with all of the hall masters to pick out talents to form the school hall. This is how you control the general direction and delegate power to your subordinates to handle the matter. If you have to do everything personally, you do not have such a huge amount of energy, and it would hold back your advancement in cultivation. Qin Mu gasped in admiration. He suddenly had a queer thought. Heavenly Devil Cult didn't seem like a cult, but more like an empire. If Eternal Peace Empire was a sect disguised as an empire, in that case, Heavenly Devil Cult was an empire disguised as a sect. Heavenly Devil Cult was too similar to an empire. 360 halls of all professions, and the disciples of every hall made their own livings. There was also supervisors supervising all of the halls, while the cult protector elders and cult heavenly kings formed the army which defended them against their enemies. The left and right guardian were the continued tradition of Heavenly Devil Cult. With millions of Heavenly Devil Cult's followers, they could completely match a small country. Of course, the followers of Heavenly Devil Cult referred to themselves as Heavenly Saint Cult, and not Heavenly Devil Cult. There's one more thing. The young patriarch sincerely instructed him with a grave expression. I know you like to tear things down, and had made Chancellor Ba Shan watch over you, yet he ended up letting you tear down Scholar's residence once more. You can tear down Scholar's residence, but you absolutely cannot tear down our Saint Arrival Mountain. Every hall on Saint Arrival Mountain is historical site, and there are numerous wonderful techniques carved inside the halls. Qin Mu's face turned slightly red as he muttered, I don't tear things down frequently. I understand. After coming to Imperial College for not more than 8 days, you had only torn things down twice or thrice before going beyond the Great Wall to tear things down. The young patriarch walked out of the hall. An elder of discipline was carrying their luggage while waiting outside. The young patriarch waved his hand to Qin Mu, I'm leaving. Cult Master, there's no need to send me off. This farewell might just be the last. No matter how far you send me off, we will still have to part ways. Qin Mu shook his head and insisted, even though it might be the last farewell, what I'm giving you is my token of appreciation. The young patriarch nodded his head and walked down the mountain. Qin Mu imitated step for step and followed beside them. He had lesser interaction with the young patriarch, and he wasn't like the other elders who had seen him grow up. Even though he had only spent a short time with the young patriarch, he saw something on him that was different from the villagers. Qin Mu learned a lot. In disabled elderly village, he was always a child that never grew up in the eyes of village chief and Granny Sai. Meanwhile, at patriarch's side, he had learned to grow up. He had now become an adult. Although he escorted him 1,000 miles, yet they must part in the end. There weren't 1,000 miles from the top to the bottom of the mountain, and they had finally walked to the end. The young patriarch turned around and bowed, Sacred Cult Master, no need to see me out. Qin Mu stopped and couldn't suppress sorrow in his heart as he bowed, farewell, Patriarch. The young patriarch jumped up and leaped off the mountain. Elder of Discipline also followed him down, and both of them disappeared into the vast sky. Qin Mu remained bowing for quite some time. After some time, he finally straightened up and looked at the sky above. He knew he would never see this young old man again. When Elder of Discipline came back, he would probably be bringing the ashes of this young patriarch. Death was nothing to fear. Entrusting your body to the mountain for all eternity. Perhaps the young patriarch's final wish was to become something like this Saint Arrival Mountain. He could be considered to have accomplished that doctrine of heavenly devil, carrying out it in his entire life. Suddenly on top of Saint Arrival Mountain, the huge flags unfurled and the 360 hall masters left one after another. Qin Mu called Hulinga over and returned to that cypress pine. There were still a few cult protector elders staying there, and they all greeted with smiles when they saw him walking over, Sacred Cult Master. Qin Mu returned the greetings. There was no one left here other than these old men and women. Granny Sai had also left, probably to send the young patriarch off. Qin Mu found the left and right guardians, and brought up the matter regarding starting up the school hall. The left and right guardians were two middle-aged men, with one in black and one in white. Looking at each other in the eyes, the left guardian asked, "What does Sacred Cult Master plan to let the school hall teach?" Qin Mu said, "All the techniques and divine arts in great educational heavenly devil scriptures can be taught. Also, other than the school hall, we will also have to set up a floor of heavenly records on Saint Arrival Mountain. This is to gather the studies of all the sects to store them in the floor, making it easy for the disciples to browse. The simplest method is to copy all the scrolls in Imperial College's floor of heavenly records, and send them to the floor of heavenly record of our sacred cult." The left and right guardians noted it down. Qin Mu said again, "Are there any brothers of the cult who are officials in the Imperial Courts? Ask them to copy down the techniques of the Imperial Courts as well and send them to floor of heavenly records." "At your command." The left and right guardians asked for the detail and immediately rose. The men in white and black raised their white and black gowns over their upper bodies and they disappeared along with their gowns. They should have teleported out from Saint Arrival Mountain. Our sacred cult's teleportation method sure is powerful. Qin Mu exclaimed endlessly and quickly brought Hu Linga to the Great Hall to learn the art of teleportation. Without learning the art of teleportation, it was absolutely impossible for him to leave here. As the sacred cult master, he can't be so thick-skinned to pester others to bring him out right. This video will end here.